there's power in taking a photograph. There's power in being an artist.
It's the Phoenix Film Revival Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Phoenix Film Revival Podcast. Whispering today. Welcome back, everybody.
Why are we so quiet?
I don't know.
Should I know something? You're not telling me.
No.
Okay, well, I guess we're whispering then.
We're whispering today. Welcome back to another episode of the Phoenix Film Revival Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Yannicone, and I have with me...
I forgot my name. I forgot.
It starts with an S.
I forgot who I was for a second.
Who am I?
You know, it's been a long weekend. No, I'm Stacey Yannicone. I'm wife of Daniel Yannicone. I sometimes remember who I am.
Sometimes.
You know.
It's been crazy.
I know.
Past couple of weeks for us.
We've been busy. That's no joke.
And it's about to get even crazier.
I know. We're having our this is our down moment here that we're having in between a bunch of craziness. But we had the Grand Ave Fest this past weekend, which was pretty cool. If no one's, here in the Phoenix area, it's Grand Ave is kind of like an arty sort of district, sort of kind of. And they had a whole festival down there, and we were, of course, open, and we sold stuff in the backyard, just lots of lab equipment that we had. Yep. And then also we had vendors that came in and they sold their stuff. And then we had people from the community selling prints inside the lab.
Yeah.
I think most people, I don't think all people, but most people sold stuff.
Yeah.
Which was great. I sold a ton of art, which is nice to get that out of boxes.
Yeah. Plus we sold about 24 pieces in the lab.
Yeah.
Of art, so.
Yeah. That was really great to see prints going out the door. Yeah. We had a really nice selection. I was really impressed how the variety was. It was sort of something for everybody. And I think that's what helped with the sale. Because sometimes when you go, and I know when I sell cyanotypes at markets, I've done in the past. And I think when people see a big sea of blue, if you're not into blue, you just kind of pass the whole kit and caboodle by. Yeah. Versus, when you're looking and there's there's all this different stuff. People had zines and larger prints and smaller prints. And there was just a really nice variety there. So it was really cool to see all the stuff. And it was nice to meet some people. There were some folks that I had never met. A couple people, I think, that had never even been to the lab, sold through the lab. Yeah. Which was cool.
Yeah, we did... We had a good time. That was November 4th. And that was our 5-year anniversary, actually.
Oh, yeah. We didn't really celebrate the anniversary. That's right.
We were so busy.
We were so busy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess technically this last weekend was our 5-year anniversary. So
that's pretty crazy.
Go us.
I know, really. I've only been around for about half of it, but...
Yeah, it still counts.
I know. You kept it going.
Yeah.
It's no easy feat.
Nope.
Just anyone out there that wants to open a dark room.
Yeah. We just were looking at numbers this weekend too, and we're like, oh man.
Why do we do this?
Why?
Because we love it. We do it because we love it. It's definitely not for the money. No one can ever say that we're doing it for the money. Yeah. That is not the case.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but it's a passion. We love it. And I think it's important to have spaces where people can come in and, both for the community to join together for different events and then also to, print and things. Because a lot of people, everyone knows you can develop at home very easily, but printing, not everybody can do that. That's so hard, especially in a city environment where people just don't have space. Yep. So it's an important resource that we're out there. So
yeah, but we had a really good weekend, and I think we're going to continue that into next year. I think next year for our detour, which I believe it's either in March or April. Mm-hmm. We might end up doing the same thing we did for Grand Ave Fest, but we'll see. We'll see how time plays out.
Yeah, the foot traffic's a little different. It's nice for the Grand Ave Fest because there's actual real foot traffic, which isn't normally a thing in Phoenix. It's sort of, everything's sort of spread out and there's not a lot of spaces where it's a lot of consistent foot traffic. Yeah. And then we're hidden in the back of our building too, which makes it a little tough, but
It was like nonstop for us, though.
It really was. Yeah. So, well, Grand FS brings a lot out. The folks that organized this year did a really good job at it. Shout out to, I believe Snood City is who took over that this year.
And Grand Ave, something. Gamma? Was it Gamma?
Oh, yeah, Gamma. Yep. They have the organization that works on it, but everybody kind of came together and really did a good event. The next step is getting that street closed.
Yes.
That'd be even better because it's still technically, if you're not familiar with the Grand, or even if you are, you might not realize the portion that we're on Grand doesn't seem like it's a highway, but technically it's a highway. It doesn't start until you go a little farther down the road, but then it's officially like a actual real highway. So people tend to drive really fast through there. So it's a little scary. And there's a lot of pedestrians and there's a lot of cars, and it'd be nice to get it all.
Yeah.
And then we could go outside up front instead of in the back. People always say, I had a couple people saying we had a clown house building. Anyone that's ever been to our building might know that you go in, it looks a little bit like you're going into a fun house.
It's like a birthday cake.
It's a birthday cake on the outside, and then the inside's got like these striped walls of like color that are like, it just looks very clownish. It's kind of
all the weird pastels that didn't sell, you know.
It is. Yeah, we have the weirdest paint colors in our building. But it was really good to have people come out. And then we had our little print thing. So in the hall, I had 6 prints. Dan had 6 prints. And we did a little contest. I don't know. You decided to do that. Let's pit ourselves against each other.
Yeah, we had prints up. So we were like, okay, well, what could we do to, like, I don't know, make it interesting? And then we were like, should we name them all? Should we label them? We didn't get around to labeling each of them, so we just left them blank. And then we did a little Stacy versus Dan contest, and I won. Haha.
Well, you got
I won the popular vote.
You won the popular vote for the print that people liked the most, but as far as the amount of votes that we had for prints, we tied. I would have won if we would have counted your vote. Yeah. You were kind enough. You actually voted for me, which was very sweet.
I had to test the app, make sure it worked. Or the form or whatever.
And then I felt bad. I'm like, I didn't even vote at all. But I thought we were disqualified, so I didn't vote. But yeah. So.
I believe Dean, I don't remember his last name, but I know it starts with a T. He won the print. So I got to reach out to him still. And
we're workshop.
Yeah, we're workshop. So... but yeah, it was a fun event. We had a lot of people vote. We actually had, 13 votes each? So that's 26 votes.
Yeah, which is pretty good for something like that. Yeah, for people to actually get on their phone and.
Yeah, we only mentioned it to a few people too. So it means people are actually stopping and reading it and then scanning it.
Yeah, because they'd have to stop, read the description, go onto the website, actually do the thing. So that was very nice of anyone that actually voted.
Yeah, it was a good little thing.
It was good to see some of your prints up.
I know.
See, Dan's always teaching and talking film craziness all the time, and then never really getting a chance to shoot or print just because of busyness. But you actually sat down and printed some stuff, which was nice to see.
Yeah, I wasn't really happy with any of them, but no.
Yeah, you got the job done.
I just got to shoot more, I guess.
Probably.
And some time. Well, we'll be shooting a lot here coming up. We have a bunch of events coming up.
Oh, with the booth. Yeah. Well, I don't get to shoot. I get to
develop.
I get to develop. I develop so hard, guys.
It's like skipping the shooting process only to develop.
Yeah.
You get to see the photos come out though.
I do. You don't normally get to see your own work, which is funny. Yeah. Like I try to take pictures before the photos go away and leave the booth. It was so funny because I don't know who's like kind of behind me, what's going on.
Right.
And then I'm like, I have no idea who the people in front of me are. I'm like, are they waiting to get a photo or did they already get a photo? I have no idea.
Yeah.
And then I have to look in the box like while it's developing. I'm like, oh, okay, I see you guys. So there you are.
Yeah.
It's you.
We've got, 3, 4 events coming up? 5?
We have quite a bit. The next one's coming up here on soon. It's the Saturday after Thanksgiving, Small Business Saturday on the 26th. 25th. Yeah, which is at Heritage Square Park. And if you've ever been to Phoenix Lee, that's a fun event. I think they charge $5 to get in. But well worth it. They have a lot of good stuff in there. They have food trucks, and then they have, it's like a maker market. So people make stuff, but there's some really nice maker market. Like sometimes you go to the maker markets and it's like, it feels a little chintzy or weird, but that's a solid one. People make some really nice stuff. And if you're looking to send people gifts like before Christmas, it's a good Christmas shopping place.
Yeah. And it's also a great place to come get your portrait taken.
Get your portrait taken. Yeah. But we'll be out better than ever. Our lighting has gotten better with every event we've done.
Yeah. And our events are going to be back to back to back. We have, we have Phoenix Flea, and we have
Terror Trader, 2 days.
Christmas to Dismember.
Yep.
Should be fun. We did the Terror Trader. What was the other one? Gathering of the Ghouls.
Gathering of the Ghouls. Yeah, this is the same vein. So it's like horror, but this is like a horror Christmas.
Yeah.
So if you like horror stuff, it's a fun thing. They got a whole bunch of horror guests too, like people from horror movies. If you go onto their website or the Instagram, they're posting up some really cool guests, which I kind of feel bad because I can't go to see them. Like these are events that are like right up my alley, but I'm still working in the booth and I don't get to go.
Yeah. It'll be over in a flash though.
Yeah.
As soon as we like start shooting, we just get so busy and tied into the booth.
Yeah, it's so fun meeting everybody too.
Yeah.
A lot of people dress up and everything.
People.
So
and then we have right after that following weekend, we have the Yule Market with Witchcrafted Market.
Witchcrafted, we're doing Witchcrafted again.
So that's exciting.
Yeah, they were super nice. That was out in Glendale. They get a really good group of people come out to that. So it's all kind of like, witchy type of stuff, which is fun, which is like, the crowd's really nice there too.
Yeah.
A lot of ladies. Lean's very lady there.
If any guys are listening, and
if you're looking for
a date,
if you're looking for the goth girl of your dreams, seriously, go to Yule Market. It's like easily like I'd say 9 to 1 female there. It's like a lot of goth girls.
Yep. I'm even gothed out as well.
Yep. Dan puts his eyeliner on. He gets in the mood.
Yep.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and then we have into January we get to do something with ASU with the booth, which is fun. And then
that's a private event, but
we have that's going to be private. And then after that, we got accepted into Wild Wild West Con.
Yeah, which is apparently the largest steampunk convention. Somebody at the Witchcraft Market we were at last time told us about it. We had no idea about it, and then she told us about it, and we got in. It's 3 days in March.
3 days.
So
we've done 2 days before.
Yeah,
we did Zona Fest.
We've been able to go home.
And yeah, that's true.
Now we're going to stay down there. We're going to be down in Tucson, staying at the hotel that I don't remember the name of it.
Casino del Sol.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we're staying on site, and then it's 3-day convention.
It's exciting to travel with the booth, like outside of our jurisdiction, out of our zone, out of our territory.
I know, yeah. Well, Tucson, it's not that far.
Yeah, still, but it'll be really exciting to go down there and do that for 3 days.
Yeah,
blasting photos left and right.
I know. Logistically, I'm a little scared, but we can do it. And then I can't believe it. Then it'll be kind of the end of the season at that point, which scares me because we just got into our better weather here in Arizona.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to state Thieves Market.
Oh yeah, Thieves.
So we have, I believe we're accepted into January.
I think it was January. I have to check my records, but I think January. That one's a good one because we're just sort of there randomly selling random stuff that we find in the lab as well, which we clean most of it out, but I'll sell some art there. And I think we have a friend, Tanisa, she had some prints that she wanted to, I'm like, bring them along. We'll get them. We'll put them out.
Yeah. So busy.
We are busy people.
Yeah. And I'm excited. I think, we just recently had this challenge with the paper too, because everybody's been buying it up. And I have been like sweating bullets like, oh man, we need this paper for the booth. And, B&H was out of stock, and then Freestyle was out of stock. And then they were out of stock on the 8x10. And I was like, no, people are going to cut it down and use it. So I'm like freaking out that we're not going to have, paper for this season. But did the math, and it looks like we're in okay shape right now. But as soon as it went into stock at B&H, it went out of stock
immediately. Yeah,
like within a couple days. So
a lot more people are shooting with that.
Yeah,
and I think Christmas is coming. People are buying pinhole cameras. The Pinstra camera.
Yeah,
I've
guys,
seen, like
if you're listening
over the place.
Your peoples are stealing our our papers that we need.
We need that paper.
Yeah. So
eventually, maybe we'll dabble into some other processes. We've been testing a little bit the color reversal.
Yeah, color reversal is interesting. We did a couple tests in the lab. I kind of willy-nilly shot a piece of paper and a kind of a janky holder, film holder, and shot basically just like a little toy car in the lab. I think I did 2-second exposure on it, which was still underexposed. So gonna be experimenting with that a little bit more, figuring out how to best expose for that. And I think part of it is you need a ton of light, almost more light than what we have for the booth, because we tested it the other day with that, and still had some challenges with getting the exposure right.
The whole thing's filtering.
Yeah, and you have to filter. So in addition to having to have a ton of light, you also have to filter over that. So that's going to even...
because the paper's made for doing color enlargement. When you're doing color enlargement, you have to deal with the orange mask on the film. So if you're just taking photos with that, normally you have to compensate for that orange being in there. So otherwise, if you don't have it, all your pictures come out blue.
Yeah.
So if you like blue, it works. But otherwise, you got to do some serious filtering, which, cuts down the light that much more.
Yeah.
And so it's a tricky process. And the people that are doing it well have been working on it pretty well, like a long time. Cameradactyl, he does some really large format ones.
Yeah.
He's been doing that for a while now.
I think I found the reason for why you go large format too, because that paper has a little bit of a texture to it.
Yes, you get a weird granularity to it. And I think the temp has a little bit to do with that as well.
Yeah. Like with our portrait booth, we have pretty sharp images. Like the resolution and everything looks really good, but with the color, it's weird because it gives a different sort of feel. But it's almost like you see the paper texture in the photo. Yeah,
color's a whole different thing. I don't know if we'd be able to do it quite the same we do at the booth with the color. I don't think so. The color is about what
I think we would need an 8x10 camera to shoot that. Yeah. And then we'd also have to have like some crazy contraption to like do all of the processing.
And that process, you have a lot of it in the dark as well. So there's no red light, kind of like we do with infrared with the paper. We can't do that with that. So yeah, it's a little tricky, but
it might be fun for something else, Church.
Yeah, it's fun to try some stuff out. And this week I tried out liquid light, which is the second time sort of that we've used liquid light. We got a Collodion process from Rockland. And the stuff, the Collodion kit really isn't Collodion at all. It's really just their liquid light processed with plates. Like they give you the plates and they give you the liquid light. It's the same thing as the liquid light. So it's not actually tintype. It's just their liquid light Collodion quote unquote stuff that they have. That's just so hard to work with though. So I went working on it this weekend, then we realized that the developer was actually spent. I didn't know. But it's kind of frustrating to use. I was using it and it's like, even at the proper temperature, it's really like spreading like glue, like the white kids Elmer glue. It's like the consistency of that for the most part, even when it's up to temp and it's like that's like the proper consistency is that consistency. And it's like just putting that onto a surface is kind of a thing. But I want to try that out again this week with some good developer. It's just we kind of ended up at the end of the night and I was like, I'm done. I didn't want to try again with Fresh Fixer, with fresh developer, but we'll try that again. But liquid light's really interesting because liquid light you can put on any surface technically. So it'll go onto glass and pottery and everything else. You just have to do some prep work ahead of time. You have to either put down a gelatin base or a polyurethane base on whatever it is that you're doing it. And then you take the photo, you do it through an enlarger. So you can do all your regular negatives right onto the objects. So I've been experimenting with that. I just wish it was a little easier to work with than it is.
Yeah.
It's
a creative process. I think, we just got to mess with it a little bit more.
Yeah. I think this week, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
I got some ideas for some stuff. So hopefully we can get something.
We just recently got to dabble a little bit with some tintypes.
We did. That was super exciting. Yeah. Our friends Nate and Lucinda. And Lucinda's been on, I think she was one of the very first podcasts.
Yep.
I think that was just when you were interviewing people by yourself.
I think she was like the third or fourth podcast.
Yeah, she was like toward the beginning. But Lucinda and Nate started dabbling a little bit into tintype and they're working it out still. And they came over to the lab and You know, we have a lot more stuff over there. It's a little easier to work in the lab sometimes because we have a lot more space.
We had our strobe set up in the back.
Yeah. So we were taking some pictures of each other and working it out and got some fairly decent images. They weren't terrible. I think it was tough because the holder wasn't like quite the right holder for it, which was kind of messing with it a little bit. But no, really close. And I think Nate's been working even more. I saw he posted up another photo up on his Instagram and it looked even better. It was of himself.
Yeah, he did. He brought over the chemistry and all the supplies and stuff and showed us the process. And Stacy almost poured like the perfect plate.
I was really proud of myself. Yeah, it wasn't bad at all. I was like, hey,
it was funny. Nate and Lucinda were watching like, what? Have you done this before? It's a lot different than that.
I actually
liquid light.
It's different than the liquid light. Liquid light, you can barely pour it out of the bottle.
It's like a paste.
It's so thick.
You gotta spread it like peanut butter.
Kind of. And it's like, you don't want it's like, that's one of those ones where if you had like one of the glass rod type of things where you could smooth it just onto the plate.
Yeah.
But no, that stuff poured out so beautifully. It was like almost easy to do in comparison because it's actual liquid, which is nice. Yeah, I didn't have too hard of a time pouring, which was nice. I've done it before a little bit with, if you've ever done cyanotype on glass. So cyanotype on glass is sort of different. Well, it's definitely different than whenever you do it on paper for sure. But cyanotype on glass has a gelatin aspect to it. So you actually make your cyanotype formula and then there's an additive that you put in there. Plus you put it into a gelatin base. You actually make a jello, which is ridiculous. We have a bottle of it in the lab in the closet and it says forbidden jello. And that's my cyanotype base that I have in there, but you heat that back up and then you pour it on, but it's thick, but it's not as thin as like the, stuff that you have for Collodion. Collodion is way thinner than that is, but I've had some experience doing that. So I've used I just haven't done them in a long time, but the cyanotype on glass pours similar. So I think I've had a little bit of practice. So it wasn't my first plate, I guess.
Wasn't your first rodeo.
It wasn't my first rodeo. And I remember it being like kind of tricky. You just have to kind of watch it. But I know for a lot of people, that's like a hard part of that process. That and the chemicals. The chemicals they can be tricky. But tintypes are amazing. Tintypes are just beautiful. And a lot of people are doing them. A lot being relative.
We've seen it pick up a bit. Yeah,
there's still people doing them. We still have our friends over at Silver and Cedar, Matt. He's been doing them. He does a wonderful job at those.
Shout out to Matt. He was on one of our previous podcasts as well.
He was. Yep. Silver and Cedar. Yep, absolutely. And then he came to the lab not too long ago. Yeah. He's been doing darkroom printing now too.
Yeah.
So he's dabbling.
He's got a nice setup now. So
yeah.
Excited for him and his journey with making prints.
Yay.
That's exciting.
You can't stop. You get in these little, it's like a downward. Like as soon as you do one thing, you're like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. And I'm going to try this. And like there's so many processes out there. It's like you can like just keep going and going and going. So that's the joy of photography. But we've been talking about all these past photographers, and I think we worked our way up to daguerreotype, I think is where we ended up at.
We did Henry Talbot.
Yeah.
He was after daguerre.
That's right. The on the paper, the calotype.
So we started with Niepce.
Yep.
And then we had daguerre, and then we had Henry Talbot.
Yep. William Henry Fox Talbot.
I got to put the whole name out.
I know. Such a proper name.
And now we have arrived at
Archer.
Frederick Scott Archer.
Oh, I like you call it Frederick.
Frederick.
It might be Friedrich. I don't think so. He was English, so I don't think it was Friedrich.
Okay. Well,
but Frederick Scott Archer, who was English. So
English.
That was so racist. We were just watching 16 Candles, and they have, if you go back, that did not age well. Oh my gosh. We were watching that, was it yesterday? And every time the Asian character comes on, they hit a gong in the show. I'm like, oh wow, this did not age well at all. I think they call him the gonger.
Bad.
It was pretty bad. So we're not being racist, more so referring back to 16 Candles, which did not age well. Nope. But anyway, so Archer,
Yeah.
So he's the next guy in line here. It made sense to talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited. Stacy did more research. Yay.
Dan loves it because he gets to sit back and gets to learn along with everybody else. And I do these little deep dive reports and figure out who these people are. And
Stacy splains.
Stacy splaining. I'm Stacy splaining.
Yep.
Yep. But no, it's okay. We'll get you involved eventually.
I'll look up the next one. We got Kodak. So we got Eastman Kodak.
We got Kodak. I think Oscar Barnack makes sense to have him involved because he really took it from studio photography to everybody photography.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, Kodak did that as well, but I think Oscar definitely has his place there. The Leica man. I mean, hey,
it's true.
I think so. I suspect he'll be in there too. And I'm kind of scared to get to Kodak because I've heard some. I don't know a lot about Kodak, but I know there's some crazy stories. Go back to the racist thing. Yeah. I think some of that was in there.
It was very, very racist.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah, so I haven't.
Which is unfortunate.
I haven't done a lot of research, but it should be interesting. I think and the older, you think like, okay, the farther back in time, it's harder to find information about people, but it's kind of the other way around here with Archer. Archer didn't actually have a lot of info about him. So it was hard. I was like, oh man, this guy.
Especially for somebody who like created this process and
you would think.
What was the process that he created? I don't think you mentioned it yet.
Wet plate collodion.
Wet plate collodion.
Yeah, which was initially he called it. Take a guess on what he called it.
What?
The archetype. The Archer type. They always want to name them after themselves, which some of them stick and some don't. Daguerre's stuck for sure. But yeah, it was wet plate collodion is what it ended up at. It's
too bad his name wasn't Nick.
Yeah.
Because he could be a Nick Collodion. Just say it.
I like it. That's not bad.
If I were to open up a tintype studio, it would be Nick Collodion. That's what it would be.
Okay.
And then it would be, all the 90s kids would be like, ha, that's funny.
Or like back then, the actual Nickelodeons, like we went to.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we went with wet plate collodion.
Wet plate collodion.
Wet plate collodion.
What the heck is wet plate?
Well, would you like to learn?
Yeah.
Okay.
School me.
Well, let me give you a little background about who this dude was first.
I looked it up a little bit. I read a little bit.
You did?
Just a minute ago.
Literally, you're schooled now.
He
Wikipedia'd for about 1 minute. Yep. He's good to go. That's all you need to know.
Educated.
Wikipedia is weird. You would think like you'd just go there and be like done with it, but that's it. It really glosses over a lot of stuff. Wikipedia gets lost in the details. Like
it's
it gives
Cliff Notes.
It is Cliff Notes. Wikipedia is the Cliff Notes version of a lot of things. Notes. So you get like a gist of stuff, but you really don't get a lot of detail. And like they'll put little snippets in, and then it'll actually have more of a backstory that probably should be there as a part of like what they put out. But it's written by randoms, so it's not. There's nobody editing or. It's just kind of what people put out there.
I tried getting us a Wikipedia, but we're not cool enough yet.
What's the requirements? What do you have to do?
There's rules. You have to get like...
We have to be famous in some way?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe someday we'll be in a Wikipedia article.
Oh, you better get working.
Yep. Gotta make some reels or something.
Something. I don't know. We're not that hip.
Anywho's.
So anyway, Archer, who does have a Wikipedia, that's not very long. Because there's
something. He's got something, though.
He definitely has one. And he is important for sure, but there's not a lot there. So he was a sculptor for the most part. And he was doing busts of people, like well-known people. That was kind of his jam that he was doing. So he sculpted. He was also a sickly guy. So he didn't feel well. He had a friend. His friend... who we have to definitely talk about this guy. So Dr. U. Welch Diamond, which is a fabulous name. He was not only a doctor and he had a relationship with Archer. He was a photographer as well. And Diamond actually introduced him to the calotype process. So that was the Fox Talbot process, the calotype on paper process that we talked about before. So Diamond was interesting. If you look up Diamond and his photography, kind of amazing. Definitely up my alley for sure. He actually, for a while, he had worked at an asylum, a mental asylum in England. And he documented women in his department. So he was the superintendent of the female department. And he documented women and he thought that their facial expressions were like a part of what they had, basically, if that makes sense. So like their mental state was like manifested in the facial features that they had, basically.
Most poor souls.
So if you go online and look up this dude, Dr. U. Welch Diamond, you will find all these pictures of all these women from the 1800s in this mental asylum. And they all look, I don't know what the word is. Some look crazy, for lack of a better word, but a lot of them look kind of mad, but they're kind of amazing photos. So he didn't do close up of their faces. They were, for the most part, actually whole body shots. But it was these women that were in this asylum that were literally locked away in an asylum, and he was taking photos. So he documented quite a few of them.
Interesting.
So it's really interesting to look at his work, because it was like, what? So yeah, so definitely look him up when you get a chance. Take a look at the work of Mr. Diamond or Dr. Diamond. Dr. Diamond. I like that. So anyway, so he was a photographer. He understood photography. So he knew Archer, and Archer was the sculptor, obviously, and he was trying to use calotype to capture images of his sculptures. That's what he was trying to photograph at the time. But he really didn't like calotypes. He didn't like the exposure time. He didn't like the paper. It just didn't work for him. He even had a quote: "The imperfections in paper photography has induced me to find some other substance more applicable and meeting the necessary conditions required of it, such as fineness of surface, transparency, and ease of manipulation." So he wanted his photos to look good. And the calotype, if you look at calotypes, they're on paper. They're a little fuzzy. They look beautiful, but they're not fine art in the way that he was looking to capture pictures of his photography. So he didn't like that. He didn't like the exposure time. Same with daguerreotype. The exposure time, he didn't like that as well. So he started experimenting. So he was experimenting with all kinds of solutions, all kinds of surfaces. And he made his breakthrough in 1849. He coated a glass plate with collodion and then exposed the plate while it was still wet, and basically invented the wet plate collodion at that point. And it really was a self-serving for what he was doing, why he wanted to do that. And he actually published a manual, and this was about 2 years after he came up with the process itself. And then it was in The Chemist. And then he published a manual of collodion photographic processes. And it's about 53 pages, and you can still find scans of that online. So you can go, and he has the whole process all completely laid out in this manual, which was really cool. Also, the process that he liked, having it, because he liked the fact that it was sharp, like the daguerreotype, because we know the daguerreotypes look beautiful and amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But he could reproduce it like you could the calotype, because it was a negative.
So you could basically make it onto a piece of glass.
That's exactly what he was doing.
And then you can, from there, make multiple copies by placing that and doing a contact print.
Yeah, and then the contacts were basically done on, I never say this word, like albumen paper. Albumen.
So the process for creating collodion, I guess it's made out of, I've searched this, and this was on the Wikipedia article that I looked up. So my little 2 cents on this is collodion is nitrocellulose, and essentially that's cotton or gun cotton that is kind of liquefied with nitrous, nitric acid.
Nitric acid.
And then there's also ether
later on. That's not in the not in the
ether and
Collodion.
alcohol.
Would you like me? I can tell you exactly what it's made out of.
Yeah,
Straight from the book.
Let's hear it.
So literally his own process out of the Manual of Collodion photographic processes. So it's very precise too. So the first one was immerse 80 grains of cotton wool into a mixture of 1 ounce each of nitric and sulfuric acid. Take out after 15 seconds and wash thoroughly in running water. And then dissolve prioxylene, so obtained in a mixture of equal parts sulfuric ether and absolute alcohol. The solution so obtained is ordinary collodion. And then add some soluble iodine, usually iodine of potassium, to the collodion. A little potassium bromide may also be added. Pour the iodized collodion onto a perfectly clean glass plate. Allow 2 or 3 minutes for the film to set. Take the coated plate into a dark room and immerse it into a bath of silver nitrate, 30 grains to every ounce of water for about a minute. Here a chemical change takes place, which the silver iodine is formed in the pores of the collodion. Remove the plate, which is now sensitive to white light. Place it into a slide holder and expose it in the camera. The time of exposure may vary from 1 moment to a quarter of an hour. Take the plate back to the darkroom. Develop it by pouring onto it a mixture of water, 1 ounce, acetic acid, 1 dram, pyrogallic acid, 3 grains. Fix the image by soaking the plate in a strong solution of hyposulfate of soda. At a later period, cyanide of potassium was preferred after that. So eventually they switched over and added a little bit of cyanide of potassium to it. But that was his process as written in his book.
That's crazy. So the nitrocellulose, for some of you guys, you know that this stuff is what is used to make explosives. So this is definitely not one of those safe processes that you can do and, hand off to your 5-year-old to go do.
It's definitely one of the disadvantages to that, because you would have it dripping a little bit and you would have the residue basically in the cameras and the plate holders.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Can you
also,
imagine all the cameras that like caught on fire and exploded and stuff?
Oh, I know. Yeah, there's an element of heat as well. I think if you go over 90 on some of those chems, it gets a little spicy.
Yeah.
And stains too. And you used to be able to recognize anyone that did that kind of work by the because silver nitrate immediately like turned your skin like a dark brown black.
Yeah.
Nate, we're looking at you. Our friend Nate. I'm like, I know what you've been doing.
You gotta definitely wear protective gear.
You gotta wear protective gear for sure. Yeah, and then if it even a little gets in your eye, that will blind you right away, like immediately.
Oh shit.
Yeah, you have to.
I did not know that.
Yes, it will blind the hell out of you. So you have to be very, very careful. And you gotta the solution itself over time. It becomes less and less effective the older it gets.
The collodion.
Yeah. The whole thing, it just starts getting affected by time. And the silver nitrate is really, really picky. You have to keep that as clean as you possibly can. If it gets even a little bit of like dust, dirt in there, it starts losing its effectiveness almost completely.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's very, very, very picky. And just being able to handle it and doing it ourselves with Nate and Lucinda, you really got to feel for that. Like there's a lot of pieces of that between the chemical portion of it, the lighting. Back in the day, they didn't have like the flashes, so they had to do it out in the sun. So, your time could vary quite a bit.
The flashes that they had way back then was flash powder.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Let's mix some...
Shooting wet plate with like flash powder going off.
Let's mix some fire in there with these chems. Let's do that.
That's a mad flex on getting a picture though.
It is.
Can you imagine? That would be a really.
I feel like our insurance won't handle that.
Nobody's got to know. We ain't got to involve them. I'd really love to try that though. Flash powder, flash powder tint type would be badass.
That'd be pretty badass. That really would.
To get the timing just right. And I wonder if there's any of those that exist. I wonder if that's a thing.
Yeah. Shout out if you know anybody doing it that way. But
yeah, That would be pretty.
Like I'm
pretty
going full like traditional here. We try to do things slightly safer and easier for ourselves nowadays, but yeah. So tintype is amazing. So it's only sensitive to UV light and blue light. So colors look weird under it. They look strange. A lot of the time tattoos kind of disappear away. Like you get tattoo people and you'll see like their arms and stuff and it'll be like almost nothing there. Much like when we do our prints with the direct positive paper, red tones go dark.
Yeah.
So if you got somebody that's kind of got like a reddish face.
We had a lot of people during our Terror Trader event that had like bloody makeup.
Yeah.
And it made them look really black.
Yep. It was black. Yep. I always look like dark in my photos that we take because I'm like kind of a red pinkish person. I have a lot of red skin tone. So I always look like that. And then blues are really cool under tintype because it looks like white, which makes people with blue eyes look amazing in tintype. Yeah. If you have blue eyes, they almost look like white eyes, like eyes glow in tintype, which is really, really cool. And freckles tend to, and sunspots and things like that really kind of pop. So you look quite different than you normally do when you get a tintype photo of yourself taken. They're very disarming a lot of the time. They just look so different.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
So the collodion process is the process of basically coating a plate and then taking that plate and then you sensitize it with silver nitrate, a solution of silver nitrate. Then from there you expose it in the camera and then you go through the process of developing it. You develop it and then you fix it and the fixer brings out the image.
Yep.
So the collodion process is the same for tintype and ambrotype, right?
It is, yes.
So one would be onto a metal plate, and then the other would be onto glass.
Yes, ambros are on glass, and then metal tintype. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
it's a cool process.
It is a very cool process. Yeah, and then collodion eventually kind of got replaced by dry plates because wet plates are kind of a pain.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You have to get everything done like all at once in there. It doesn't last very long once it's wet. You have to really start taking the photo once it's like set and everything's there. Like you have to have that happen like pretty much right away. You don't get a lot of time to work. So it was a very fast, process. And anyone that does tintyping nowadays can probably tell you that. Like you have to get all of these little pieces done and get it shot and get it developed. It all has to, you can't just sit around on it. You can't like pour a whole bunch of wet plates, let them sit around and then come back to them. It doesn't work like that. And then also, the ISO of this stuff is super low. You're looking at 1-ish for the ISO of a tintype or collodion, I guess collodion in general. It's a little confusing when you say tintype and ambrotype and collodion. And you just have to think that collodion's the process, tintype's the application. And like
it's what it's getting applied to.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
Where the image is being created.
Yeah, because collodion just on glass, collodion really makes pretty much a negative is what it's making, but you have to put something dark behind it. So having the tintype, it's not tin, it's like a lacquered metal, but it's black on the back.
I think modern tintypes are on aluminum, a black aluminum, just because it's most convenient material.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's inexpensive.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is collodion is what it actually is. So, but then people did get the dry plates, and dry plates are pretty fun. And that's really silver halides that are just suspended in gelatin in there.
You got to make one the other day.
Yeah, we had plates in the lab, which was like, wait, what?
I don't know if I've shared this story before, but around when COVID hit and the lab kind of shut down, there was a place down the street that was getting rid of a lot of equipment. They had gone and closed back in about 2012 when Google Maps took off. They're an aerial mapping company. And so we got to acquire some of this gear that was just being discarded. And we got some of these weird plates that were part of the process there. Not exactly sure what they were used for.
What size are they? They're like 10 by 10 squares, right?
10 by 10. And Stacy was like, "Oh, I want to print on one of them." I was like, "Okay, good luck."
I think Dan was he didn't want to see his
She
little
found my
plates.
plates.
I found the plates.
She found the
I was like,
secret plates.
wait, what are these? Well, they don't do anyone any good sitting in the closet.
Yeah, that's true. But you actually got some good results on that.
I did.
Surprisingly
I
enough.
put one of the prints up on the wall, like up on the shelf or whatever.
Yeah.
This looks pretty nice, actually, surprisingly.
They're like giant lantern slides.
Yeah, very cool. But that was the joy of the dry plates whenever dry plates came around, because it was just so much more convenient. And then you could also make them more sensitive, so you didn't have the time, so it really reduced that exposure time. And then that's kind of the point. At that point, that's when modern photography sort of hit the tripping point. After that, before it was a lot of experimentation. A lot of this was, people doing it in their own photo studios. You had to go to a dude. Like, it started, the tripping point was after
You had to know a guy.
You had to know a guy. There was a lot of guys out there, though. They were doing it. It really, especially once daguerreotype took over that, and then tintypes, it was like, woo, there's a lot of people out there.
I like in Left 4 Dead, the little tintype. Is that Left 4 Dead?
Left 4 Dead. Is that a movie?
Or what's the game? The video game.
The video game.
Yeah, with the little tintype studio.
Oh, you're talking about with, now I forget, because you said Left 4 Dead, and that's throwing me off on my brain.
Or Left 4 Dead's not.
No, with the cowboys.
Yeah, the cowboy game.
The cowboy game. Yeah, with Arthur. Arthur. Yeah, they do have a little tintype studio that you get to go to in the game. Like, you get to go.
Yeah. Isn't that Left 4 Dead?
No, it's not called Left 4 Dead.
Oh.
I now forget. I forget the name, but it's definitely not called Left 4 Dead.
Oh, well, it's a fun cowboy game.
But the cowboy game, because it's set in like the late 1800s, and they have a photo studio that you get to go to in the town. And then you can get your little video game person's picture taken.
Yeah.
You can dress up the little outfits and stuff, and the background and everything, which is really fun.
It's a fun game.
Yeah. So he also designed a folding collodion camera. So because it's, he basically had a portable darkroom that he built for it, which was pretty cool. So he had, like, in the back, he had the, black velvet sleeves, and then inside the box he could sensitize, develop, and fix inside the in there. And he had an amber window, because you can do this process under amber light. So much like, in a regular darkroom, you can do that, which is super nice.
Which makes it convenient to take your little booth places.
Yeah.
And just put a little piece of amber material, either glass or whatever it may be, and, post up somewhere and do it.
So he made a very cool little folding up camera, and it was pretty compact too. It was like a 12 by 18 when he folded the whole thing up. So that was nice.
That's compact.
Well, for the day out in the field. Yeah.
That
so he
massive.
designed a really cool camera. It's not too bad. 12 inches by 18. That's not too bad. You see some of these cameras, some of these people are carrying around nowadays.
Yeah, that's true.
What was that big one? You had that 617 camera.
Yeah.
That's that thing's monster.
Mega camera.
Yeah, exactly. This thing probably weighed less. So, but anyway, you can definitely find some of his photos. The Royal Photography Society and the Victor and Albert Museum in England have them. It's interesting with his photos that he did take, because he was a sculptor and a lot of his sculptures were of people, but the photos that he took were not. He took pictures pretty much at, landscape. It was almost no people that he took. And if he did, like, none of them survived. So there wasn't many. There's actually a collection of his as well in St. Louis, Missouri.
Interesting.
Yeah, they have an International Photography Hall of Fame there. I'm not 100% sure why it's there exactly. I have to look into that. But yeah, he has a whole bunch of that. And then, a lot of his pictures have been lost with time, because that's just sort of what it happens. But there's definitely out there, which is nice.
That's exciting.
No, it's funny with this guy. So if you go to look for pictures of him, you will see very quickly that everyone posts the same photo, because there's only one.
He only has one photo of himself?
There's one photo of him. There's only one. Robert Cade took it. Yeah, and it's a portrait of him from 1855. It's the only one. I mean, I'm assuming there was maybe some others along the way, but there's absolutely none that survived to this day. So if you look him up and you look for a picture, that's all you get.
Imagine only having one photo of yourself.
I know. Well, that was my childhood. I only had like 2 pictures.
That's crazy, though.
Yeah, it's a little weird. It's
so strange to think you'd only have one photo of yourself.
Yeah, I wondered that when I was looking him up, and everyone kept using the same photo. I'm like, is there not any other photos? And then I started digging around. I'm like, oh, there isn't. This is all we have. I came across another photo of him that was later years, supposedly him, that some other people thought maybe it was, but I don't think it was him, because he actually died very young, and the picture of the person that someone thought possibly could be him looked way too old. So I don't think it was actually him. But yeah, so he only had that one photo. Also, he didn't patent this idea, which, yeah, he was one of those give it free to everybody ones. And popular is... daguerreotype was popular, but no, this was popular. This was, collodion was like where it was.
Sounds like a much safer, easier, safer.
Yeah.
Sort of compared to daguerreotype.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Plus larger. I guess
there was, the fumes and the vapor and all that. You have to use the daguerreotype for sure. It was like easier. You could definitely by comparison.
You could put it on a cart and take it somewhere.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Which made it so you can actually take pictures
anywhere
elsewhere.
Yep, you could do it in
a studio.
Field. Yeah, so he should have patented. He would have been incredibly rich if he would have, but he didn't.
And then he died.
Yeah, and it took over for calotype and daguerreotype like immediately within like a couple years of being out. Calotype and daguerreotype were completely forgot about. Like it was that popular where people were just like, nope. And it was popular all the way through until like the end of the 1800s where it was like super popular. And yeah, he died. He died at 43.
Wow.
He was really young. He had cystic disease of the liver. It was hereditary. So he had a real issue with that. And if you look up that sounds like a terrible way to go. Okay. There's all kinds of parts of your body that it affects, not just the liver. But yeah, he was only 43 and he died completely poor. He had no money when he died. We hear this a lot with photography. Is that
We're doing it. We're making it.
We're doing it. We're gonna die broke just like the rest of them.
Yeah.
I'm so proud. So he was buried in a pauper's grave, unfortunately. And then also, unfortunately, this is such a sad story with this guy. His wife, Fanny, she died a few months after him.
Oh no.
And then he had 3 kids and only one of them made it to adulthood.
Jeez.
I know, right?
Poor family's cursed.
It's so sad. The whole thing is so sad. But the Photographic Society, they did start an Archer fund to actually raise a little bit of money for the widow and the kids after he had died. And they did raise a little bit of money. It wasn't a lot. It was like under £1,000 of money. Yeah. I mean, back in the day, it was like not terrible, but still it wasn't much.
They had a GoFundMe.
Back in the day, GoFundMe. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So eventually at one point, the government did kind of recognize that and they did try to help the family a little bit. And eventually they did get a £50 a year pension, but it was in consideration of his scientific discoveries. So they got a little something, but he obviously did not, and he didn't patent it. So he kind of lost out on that end. And then eventually in 2010, he finally got a marker on his grave. He basically had an unknown
2010?
10, yes.
Seriously?
Yes. So,
wow.
At least it is marked now for sure. And apparently his obituary had described him as an inconspicuous gentleman in poor health, which is kind of sad. It's all very sad. I was reading all of about him. And I'm like, this is just so sad about this guy. Because he did something so amazing and like so done to this day. And like he just died poor and his family died. And
whenever I pour a wet plate in the future, I'm going to say, gotta pour one out from my homie.
And pour one out for Archer. That's true. It's true.
Pour one out for my homie.
Yeah, you got to like acknowledge that. I mean,
yeah, that's a shame. That's like such a crazy process to like come up with. And not get, I mean, obviously he's recognized, but not get money for this thing that, everybody else is profiting from, which is the big shame of all of it, is more so, him getting a little bit of a cut from all that. And then he goes and he dies. Like, doesn't even get to live that long. But
no, God, 43, not young, not old at all. I was looking the photo that some people thought maybe possibly was him. It showed a man that had completely white hair, white beard. It looked like an old man. Like, when you're younger, you think, oh, that sounds totally appropriate. But now I'm 48 and I realize that did not look like a 44-year-old man, even if in poor health.
Was it Talbot? Could it have been Talbot?
I don't know. They didn't know who it was. And someone had thought maybe it could have been him. But looking at it, I don't think it was. But yeah, kind of a shame. But, and it, like I said, it opened up the other processes. It opened up ambrotype and tintype, which was kind of amazing. Ambrotype actually means immortal impression in Greek, which is really cool. That's how ambrotype came around.
That's badass. I thought ambro was like amber in like glass.
Oh, no, that would make sense. That sounds like it, right? But yeah, no, that's what it came from. It was actually, and ambrotypes were patented by an American photographer, actually. And Ambro was actually his name, because it's always their name.
It's always a name.
James Ambrose.
Of course.
Ambrose cutting. The process was just slightly different because you'd have the glass negative that would be just slightly underexposed than it would normally be for the collodion that was being used by Archer.
Right.
And then it would be on the dark background. And you'd see the ambrotype. And then that's how you tell the difference now when you go to like a thrift store or something. You'll still see ambrotypes and you'll still see tintypes and you'll still see daguerreotypes. And to find the difference on them is just looking at what they're put on and how they're,
Matt just did Matt with Silver and Cedar actually just did a show, and we didn't get to attend it, but I saw on the Instagram story that he did some ambrotypes like that.
Yes, he did. Yeah, and we have another one of their ambrotypes in our house here that he did. Yeah, because we got from when he did his book.
Right.
Yep, he did some ambros then. So ambros are cool. And then ambro was, then the tintype came around, and that was basically just on a black lacquered iron sheet on that. And then they're really sturdy. So ambro, you have glass, and daguerreotype, you have glass, but iron sheets, tintypes, real sturdy. And they became super popular. And I thought, it makes sense. We should kind of talk a little bit about tintype photography as well. And the first person that kind of comes to mind with tintyping is Mathew Brady. Mathew Brady was kind of the guy that was, he's important with tintyping in photography because he did the Civil War photography. So I thought it would be important we maybe talk about Mathew because he had a kind of an interesting history himself. And kind of get into how he got into it and everything. So he actually studied Mathew Brady. He studied under Samuel Morse. Take a moment and think of what that name sort of sounds like. And if you're thinking Morse code, you'd be correct. Because Samuel Morse was actually a co-developer of the Morse code and also the telegraph. So Samuel Morse, the Morse code guy, he pioneered daguerreotype in America. He was one of the guys, because we know Daguerre came up with it, and then people started taking out with his process. Morris actually went and visited Daguerre in France, and he really, really liked the process a lot. And he was actually he published the first-hand account of the daguerreotype in America. Like, he was taken with it. He really, really liked it. In the New York Observer in 1839. He had it and had a whole entire article that had with daguerreotype, which was really cool. And he was one of the very first Americans in the U.S. actually that did daguerreotyping. And he had a studio as well. And he had students that would come into his studio, and then he'd teach them the process. And Mathew Brady, he was one of the very first people to actually take a class with Morris. So that's where he learned from him. Now Brady started taking off with his photography pretty hardcore, and he actually had a portrait studio in New York at Broadway and Fulton. that was incredibly popular. And I looked up the address where that's at, and his studio actually is now at Chase Bank.
No.
Which just sounded
Of
funny.
course.
Of course. He still comes up on Google, though. If you put in there at Broadway and Fulton, you'll see that Mathew Brady's photography studio pops up. He was really popular. He took pictures of a lot of really important people at that studio. Like Edgar Allan Poe got his photo taken by him at that studio.
Oh, that's badass. I wonder if the Chase Bank actually has like some homage
I don't
homage
know.
to him.
Maybe. Sometimes you do that. You go into local businesses and they have sort of stuff,
Yeah.
for that. But yeah, I was like, oh, of course, it's a bank. He also opened up a studio in Washington. So he was like, he knew a lot of people. He knew a lot of important people. He actually photographed 18 of the U.S. presidents. So at the time, he photographed 18 of the 19 at the time presidents that existed.
That's insane.
The only one he didn't take a picture of is the one that died after he got into, and I don't remember his name. He died like 2 months in. Like, what was that guy's name? I forget. I'm bad with my president's name, but he's the guy that like became president, and then
Hamilton?
no, and he immediately died. But he took pictures of the other ones. So Adams, Lincoln, Van Buren.
Taft?
His name actually came
Madison?
up before when we had all of them. Not Taft. Taft was later.
Madison?
You're just naming presidents.
Surprised I remember them all.
Going through the list.
George?
I could never remember that list. I think they used to do that in school where you had to like do, remember all the presidents
Bush?
in order.
Cheney?
I don't think he took any pictures of Bush or Cheney, no. We
Clinton?
mentioned him before on I believe the Daguerreau process. I think we talked briefly, tintype. He's the guy that did the photo of Lincoln. He did a few photos of Lincoln, but the photo that's on the $5 bill currently was based off of Mathew Brady's photo that he took of him. So he took a lot of photos, a lot of people. So if you look at a $5 bill, that's Mathew Brady's work right there.
That's crazy.
So he had his studios. They did very, very, very well. And then the Civil War started. And he basically had mobile studios and dark rooms. And he took thousands and thousands of photographs. I'm going to say he didn't necessarily, he had a whole troop of people to do that. He actually hired a bunch of guys, but he took pictures of like the battlefields. He took pictures of the generals, just kind of everybody. And whenever he first started the business, his original concept was taking pictures of soldiers. And he actually ran ads that said, you cannot tell how soon it may be too late. Basically telling people like, you're going to go die in this war and you're not going to have any photos of yourself. You should get in my studio and I'll get some photos of you first, which is really funny. It's like sort of that's an aggressive marketing campaign if there ever was one.
Yeah, seriously.
But he shifted gears as the war started, and he actually started documenting actual war. And he even went up to the general. He went to General Winfield Scott and asked him permission to have his photographers at the battle sites. They got permission through that. And he also wrote Lincoln as well. And Lincoln allowed it. He just told him, you have to fund this yourself. We're not going to fund you doing this, but you can certainly be there if you want to.
Wow.
And he actually got into some actual battles. He came under direct fire in some of them. He almost got taken hostage in a couple of them. So he was in the thick of it for sure. But he had hired a whole bunch of guys. So he had 23 photographers that were each given their own mobile darkroom. And at the very beginning he was there, but then it switched over where he was pretty much directing from DC while all the photographers were out in the field. A little bit because he was also, which is so ironic, he was going blind. He had a real issue with his eyesight. So he wasn't, the photos of what he could take and what they could take. So he sort of just told them where to go and kept an eye on his sort of directing them on the war and everything. So he took these crazy, like unflinching views of the battlefields of dead bodies. So if you look at Mathew Brady, you'll see a lot of like fields of dead soldiers and stuff like that.
I remember seeing a lot of that in our textbooks.
Yeah, a lot of that was him. That was his guys that did that. He's basically considered the father of photojournalism. Like he's the guy that's kind of the start of that. Yeah, no one else at that point was, it makes sense that no one else was doing that. There was no way to like really take photos like that. So the Civil War sort of when it all, you actually had the means to take photos of people out in the field. There's not any really of like the actual wars, the actual battles, because it was moving too fast. So most of what you see is people that are dead, or there's some places where you'll see a lot of soldiers just kind of hanging around, but you also see blurry people in the background because there was like, anyone that was moving still would not get quite caught in it.
Right.
But yeah, he spent a lot of his own money too. He spent about 1.8 million in today's dollars to be there. And he created between him and his team, about 10,000 plates throughout that. Yeah, which was kind of crazy. His goal and why he spent all that money, he really truly thought that the U.S. government was going to purchase his plates. They did.
He doesn't know the government, does he?
Here's a hint. They didn't really want them. They did buy some. The War Department did eventually buy some later on. They bought about 6,000 of his negatives, but they only bought them for about $2,800.
What a rip.
Yeah.
He did it for exposure.
Hey. You made it funny.
Exposure.
Literally. So he didn't make the money that he thought he would make, and he had to sell his New York City studio. And once again, he died penniless.
That's a shame.
No money. I know. So sad. He is responsible for the Brady stand, if you've ever heard of a Brady stand. And it's basically like a cast iron base column, adjustable height column. And you'll see if you look at a lot of photos back in the day, people are leaning against columns, like these decorative columns. And he's responsible for those. They actually called them the Brady stand. So he actually, when he died too, so sad. He was involved in a hit and run horse buggy accident.
That's a shame.
I know.
Hit and run horse buggy accident.
It was a hit and run horse and buggy. Yeah. Yeah. So, but it was interesting. It's good to look at him because his work was really kind of amazing. And he sort of took the wet plate collodion to a different level for sure. By getting out there, he obviously did like a combination. He was doing daguerreotype, but he was also doing, then he moved into tintyping. So he's doing like most of those are tintype and the people that were out in the field. And if you look up hard enough, you can find pictures of some of the wagons and stuff that they actually took out, the little mobile ones that they would take out into the field to see. But yeah, so sad, these guys. Like, man, everybody, all these photographers always die. No money. Some sort of sad story. But yeah, he got hit and run with a freaking horse and buggy. He was going blind. A photographer going blind.
That's ridiculous.
Invested like every cent he had into like being in the most dangerous place you could at the time during these battles. And then nothing.
That's a hell of a life to live, though.
It is. But, he left a really interesting legacy of photos, though, because the photos he left behind, otherwise we wouldn't have these photos of the Civil War. If you go back, like his team is pretty much responsible for taking the photos of the Civil War. So very important work that he did. It's just not until way after the fact that, it kind of gets recognized as it should have.
It's crazy to be iconic in that sense.
Yeah.
That nothing else exists. There was nobody else really out shooting.
Mm-hmm. That
there's like this collection and you're part of that process and being able to go shoot these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the opposite of social media nowadays where it's like everybody took a picture of the same thing. And back then it was like these instances that are, very personal, on a battlefield, let alone to capture that sort of thing. Yeah. And with the help of Frederick Scott Archer to, create this process and it get passed down, and people still use this process today. It's
absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah, tintypes are really cool. They're like sort of a, longer process, but a version of a Polaroid in a way.
Yeah, I think our when we shot with Nate and Lucinda, it was about a 20-minute process for each shot. Mm-hmm. So it does take some time to actually shoot and develop, but it's amazing. We have a giant 8x10 of our
we do
engagement portrait.
It's our engagement portrait. Oh yeah, shout out once again though to Silver and Cedar.
Yeah.
Just realized they just got engaged this week.
Yeah, shout out to them.
Congrats, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we have our engagement portrait. Who needs engagement rings when you can get a freaking 8x10 tintype?
Yeah.
That's so much cooler.
Yeah. That's a pretty awesome print and tintype, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's like almost got like a gold finish to it.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
It's really awesome and just amazing to see something that large, 8x10. Just it seems so massive. But
yeah, I totally recommend anyone that's never gotten one. Look around in your area. You'll probably find somebody that's out there doing them.
Yeah.
And they range in price. I mean, size wise and experience wise, and but you get someone that knows what they're doing. Like it's important.
Yeah.
And if you want to get into doing it, I'd say maybe start with a couple other things first.
Yeah.
Don't go straight from maybe your film camera straight into that. There's a lot of steps there and a lot of safety concerns and
yeah, I
don't think you'd want that. I wouldn't want to do that necessarily in my house.
No.
Oh, it'd be
you definitely need a studio. You need some place safe to definitely store the chemistry.
Store your chems and also just breathing in general, a lot of that stuff.
There's circulation for sure.
Ethers in there. Doesn't smell great. No, the silver nitrate isn't the best. Yeah, it's not. I mean, to a certain extent, a lot of these photography processes are it's safer than Daguerreau.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, you don't want to just like jump in the deep end or do. We can't tell you what to do. You can certainly do that. No, it is an amazing process. I like to do it more. It's just like one of those things where you really have to commit yourself to the time and the practice of getting it right, because it's not just as simple as it's like, putting film in a camera and going.
Yeah, there's definitely the expense.
A lot of pieces of it. Yeah, the expense is a big one.
Startup cost is pretty significant to do tintyping. I mean, there are ways to go a cheaper, less expensive route. Can cut corners to some degree, but realistically, you need like $500, $600 just to even get a semi decent setup to start. Started. Yeah. And then the chemistry, of course, is pricey too. So
yeah. And then to hone that in. And some people are like amazing at it. Like look at Silver and Cedar. They know exactly what they're doing. And he's taken so many that he really has honed it down to it. It's just it's a craft. And you have some people doing them out. Like, was that Ian? I'm going to forget his last name. He's on Instagram. He did a lot of Slab City photography. He does tintype. And he does amazing out in the field work with his. He does on glass, I think, mostly out in the field, but ginormous. And he's doing literally out in the field. Like that's just a lot of dedication to do that. And I think the Chemtrist does too. Online, I believe it's Chemtrist. Bad at everybody's names, but doing gigantic plates. And that makes that pouring, like when you're talking about the pouring, it's like, okay, you're doing a little 4x5 plate.
Yeah.
But then you take it up and you're doing like a 3-foot plate.
Yeah.
That's a completely different thing. Like some people are doing these giant formats.
It's like when you see a waitress or a waiter with a giant like platter of food and it's got like everybody's meal on it. It's like, how are you holding that? And like, how are you balancing that just right? It's the same thing when it comes to like pouring a plate. It's kind of a crazy process to make sure you coat it properly. You can't just pour it and then adjust it. You have to pour it and it has to be a nice, clean, smooth pour. Yes, because otherwise you get these weird waves and stuff that go through it. So it has to pour perfectly. You know, I used to waitress back in the day when I was a wee little person. That's where you got your experience in pouring plates. Might have been the balance. No, but I just remember, I just had a flashback of holding a tray full of food, like with like, you'd have like 10 people's food like on one big giant tray. I never dropped one either. I dropped an entire coffee pot on a person once. Yeah, that wasn't great. Nope. It was not great at all. But I managed to not drop food on anybody. I've known people that have done that. They left the kitchen and the whole entire tray of all of it came down off of it. It's a special balancing act. It's not too bad when you're carrying it around. It's when you start removing them if you don't put it down on like one of those table things. If you try to do the balancing thing, then you got to readjust. Yeah.
Oh, my left arm was so strong.
Get ripped, but just my left arm.
Yep, that was my carrying arm. I couldn't carry on the right side. That's how you pulled it off. It was like carry on the left. Yeah, I had to go upstairs too with the tray.
No, thank you. Pass. I'd rather pour plates instead.
Yeah, plates seem a little like I couldn't do it today. Like, oh my gosh, I'd be spilling stuff all over the place. But I had youth on my side. I was 21, so a little different.
Well, thank you guys again for joining us for another podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. And thank you, Stacy, for researching our guest.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad. I wish I could have found even more on him, but he is elusive.
Yeah.
And he didn't live that long. So, and he wasn't very popular. He was really only popular for the time that he was, he was fully adult. He died shortly after this process came out. So unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot about him, but incredibly important. So important. It was it really got a lot of photography going, like mainstream. So.
Yeah. Well, on to our next person.
I know. Yeah. And then after this podcast, who's our next guest?
Our next guest is Frank Thorpe.
Frank Thorpe. That's exciting.
Yes.
That was
I'm
a good
excited
one.
to finally release Frank's podcast. So definitely keep an ear out for that one.
Yeah.
And listen to our podcast on the daily.
On the daily, every day. You just
every day.
We only put it once a week, but we want you to listen to it every day.
Yep.
But no, if you could kindly share our podcast with other folks, that'd be really nice. And if you could also give it a rating, that helps us a lot.
Yeah. This is we're going into our first full year of podcasting.
I can't believe that.
We've got 24 episodes.
Amazing.
This is episode 24, I believe. So
yeah, and we switched over partway through to the once a week schedule there for a while. It was twice a month, but
so next year 52.
We'll have 52.
Maybe 53 because next year's leap year. So
do we get I thought you get less weeks.
I don't know.
You just miss a day.
You just get an extra day.
You don't lose a whole week.
No, you get an extra day in a leap year.
No, leap year you skip a day.
No, you add a day.
Do you?
I know this because my birthday's in February.
But you're not a leap year baby.
It's a 29. No, I get that. But anyways.
Fun fact, Dan is a Valentine's Day baby.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Yes, it is.
No, everyone knows your birthday.
Yeah, well, you're June 24th. So now everybody knows your birthday.
Why would I care?
Same. Ditto. Thank you, guys. We will catch you again on the next one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.